Hey folks, welcome back to Good Enough Customs. So, actually we started last night and I started to record, but it was a little chaotic in here, so figured I'd just clean slate. Let's just start over this morning. So, anyhow, what we got going on today is we've got my buddy Kruck, his son Caiden. We've got his 76 C10 in here. As you can tell, we're swapping the radiator out last night and had a bit of a spill. And, you know, pro tip for you, keep some kitty litter around because it's great for cleaning up, you know, coolant spills, oil spills, all that stuff. Just don't buy the clumping stuff. It's a mess. So last time I bought some kitty litter, I couldn't find any regular non-clumping, so I ended up buying the clumping stuff. And, well, you know, you can see it clumps very well, but if you step on it, it's like stepping in clay. It is so sticky. It's gross. But anyways, so yeah, keep some kitty litter around, but make sure you get the non-clump. If you want to smell good, you can get the stuff that has the scent to it, which I've done that in the past, but it costs more. So I think today I just went out and bought 40 pounds for $10. So it's great for cleaning up oil spills and whatnot. But anyways, on to the task at hand. So we have Caiden 76 Chevy. It's a long bed C10, two-wheel drive. It just sitting way up in the air because, you know, we've got it off the ground. But oh, look at this sweet camper top, man. That I actually found that one for him on Facebook Marketplace, and I sent it over to him, and his mom was just like, no. I'm not sure how he ended up with the top, but he still got the top. I freaking love it. I think it's beautiful on this truck. Yeah, sorry, Britt. So anyhow, but here we go. So we've got some really good patina on this truck. I showed this truck a while back on, I think it was when we were doing Jeremy's reveal, the episode with Jeremy's reveal. Yeah, now you can really get a good shot of this thing with that topper. But I showed a little bit of this guy whenever we was doing the reveal on Jeremy's truck way back in, I think that would have been back in December was whenever that one got uploaded. I'm not sure. I'll link it somewhere up here. But anyways, so this truck, we picked this guy up right at the beginning of the old COVID. Right at the beginning of the COVID stuff. It was that March we picked this thing up. Picked it up out of Knoxville for $800, and it's a cool truck. It's really straight. It doesn't have a lot of rot. It does have a lot of surface rust. Not a ton of rot though. There's a little bit in the floor pans, but and there's some in the bed floor. But for the most part, it's a pretty solid old truck. Anyhow, so when we picked this truck up, I went out to go look at it and everything. It had the bottom end of a motor in it, and it had the top end of the motor sitting in the bed. And the guy didn't know how long it had been sitting that way. But it had been sitting that way for quite a while. There was some rust down in cylinders and stuff like that. Long story short, we were like, all right, you know, at the time I had a 76 GMC that I just picked up. It was sitting here at the house, and had a low mile 350 in it. And I was like, hey, you can just throw that in there to get it up and running. Everything will be cool. We got the other 350 out. We set it up on the engine stand just to go over everything. And that's when we discovered number 7 was full of water. So it was like, well. And yeah, we ended up pulling basically 4 motors over the next month. And it worked out beautifully because, you know, everything was shut the hell down. There was no school. There wasn't, I mean, I was still working because, you know, I guess I'm, what was the term that they used for that? Vital? No, that doesn't sound right. I don't remember. Anyways, I was an important guy. Not really. Essential. That's what it was. I was an essential worker. So yeah, I still had to go to work. But that did mean I still got a paycheck. So that was nice. But, so anyways, so the boys weren't in school. I was still going to work, but we would let the boys work on those motors and pulling them. So they pulled 4 motors inside of 4 weekends. But every time we go to drop one in here, we'd find some problem with it. You know, like we had a, you know, of course, this motor that was in this truck didn't have a top end. It was rusty as hell down in cylinder walls. The motor that I had, that was a 72,000 mile motor, had number 7 full of water, and it was pitted and a little scaly inside the cylinder wall. It's like, that's probably not gonna, you know, hone out. Let's see, what did we pull then? We pulled a 283 out of, yeah, Kruck's step side that sits out back. We pulled 283 out of it, and as we were dipping it back underneath the hood, it was just puking oil out the back. The rear main was leaking. So anyways, long story short, we kind of ran out of options. So what we ended up deciding was like, you know what? Screw it. We're just needing it to drive and run, at least temporarily. So so we took the motor that came in the truck and basically got some WD-40 and some Scotch-Brite. And Scotch-Brited the inside of the cylinder walls, knocked all the rust off. It wasn't pitted, it was just surface rust. So we knocked all that rust off, rotate the motor over, knock more rust off, rotate the motor, you know, basically doing all that. Well, the heads off of my motor were perfectly fine. So we threw those heads on here, and then, yeah, we basically put this motor together, you know, over a weekend, just like, screw it, let's just do it. And who cares if it lasts for, you know, if it lasts for a couple months, we'll be tickled. Well, here we are 2 years later, and the motor's still kicking. But, you know, she's got some leaks and, you know, stuff like that. So I believe the timing cover's leaking. If I remember right, it was either the timing cover or the front of the oil pan is leaking a little bit. I think we might even have a power steering leak over here. But they've added a Holley sniper system. Let's see, it's got the Holley sniper, it's got the their Hyper Sparks built in with all that. So we ran 3-inch exhaust on this guy, which we're actually going to redo, kind of. The O2 sensor for the sniper system is sitting at too low of an angle, so we got to take and rotate it up. We're also switching out the mufflers, because the mufflers that are on here, they're a little loud, they resonate a little bit, they make a little bit of racket. Where basically it's just blowing your ears out driving down the road. So I think Kruck said he put a dB meter on it, and it was registering like 85 or 86 dB without the radio inside the cab. So so we're gonna put on some quieter mufflers, and we're also gonna move those back. Right now the mufflers are pretty much right underneath the back of the cab, so we're going to shove them things as far back as we can, closer to the axle, and then we're still going to take and probably just dump it over the axle and call it good. But hopefully that'll take care of some of that drone and some of that rattle that goes on inside the truck. Now this thing does have a cam in it. I forget the numbers on it. I can ask Caiden later when he gets out here and see, but it's pretty choppy. It sounds really nice. So what we're going to end up doing today is they're getting ready to go to Battle in Bama. You know, unfortunately, I'm not going to that this year. Plans change, things happen. I'm just not going to be able to make it. So what I'm doing is I believe Kruck's daughter has a softball tournament or something today. I don't remember. He's not able to be here, but his son is. So Caiden's here. He's going to be coming out and giving me a hand. He better. It's his freaking truck. Make the same deal with him. You work on it, your truck. I work on it, my truck. Maybe I'll start doing that. That'd be handy. So what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be doing a C-notch in the back. So the rear end has been lowered with an axle flip kit, where you take the axle and you flip it back on top of the leaf spring, so you actually have a spring under. It drops the rear end around 5.5 inches. The problem you run into a lot of times is sometimes you can get by without a C-notch, and it's fine. Sometimes you can't. And he was able to get by without a C-notch for the last year and a half or so. I forget when exactly we dropped this thing. But he's been able to get by without a C-notch up until this point. When he put the topper on there, granted it's an aluminum topper. It's not super heavy, but it's enough weight to where it dropped it down just enough to where now they hit bumps and that axle's smacking the bottom of the frame. I guess that's enough of my yammering on. So I reckon it's time to get to work. So we'll catch up here in just a second. So whenever we're doing a C-notch, a couple things that people mess up on this is they go ahead and they say, here's where the axle is. Here's the center line of the axle coming up right in here, right? Well, that's not the case. So what's going to happen is, as the suspension cycles, so we have the long side leaf spring here, we have the short side here. So as the suspension cycles, it's going to push back just a little bit. It's not a lot. I think I measured it on the other side. It was like a 1/2 inch. So it does change where the center line is going to be on here. So what you can do is mark center line on here. You know, best guess. It's not real difficult to figure out where your center line is on the axle shaft. So, or axle tube. So find your center line, you know, pretty close, mark that, and then you jack up the rear end as high as it goes, basically till it starts lifting off the, the jack stands. Right as it starts to, you know, get off the jack stand, then you take and you drop a plumb bob from up here to line it up with your center line mark here. I don't have a plumb bob, so instead, I'm just using a piece of string with a nut on it. It ain't perfect, but it works. So I'm gonna mark a line here, and then we're gonna jack up the rear end, and then I'll mark the center line up here, so that way I know where my center line is there, and then I'll find my center line on the C-notch bracket. So, so this is where all the fun is. So we'll catch back up here in just a few minutes after I get this marked, and we'll get this guy jacked up. All right, so you can see maybe where my center line is. I marked on the axle tube, and my center line now on the axle, or the frame. So you can see they're off. It's about maybe a 1/2 inch-ish, 1/4 inch. I don't know. I can't tell, you know, measurements that close from that far. But yeah, there's an offset there. So yeah, so the axle moves up and back just slightly. So we just want to make sure that we get that guy centered when we go to put the C-notch in. That way it doesn't do what we're trying to avoid, which is banging into the frame. So so now we got that done. A couple things that you got to remember on the passenger side, especially on C10s on the passenger side, is where your brake lines run. So there's actually a bracket right here, and I believe there's one right up here, way up here. They're just little bolts that hold down a bracket for the brake line. So you just have to pull these little bolts out. I can't remember what size they are. I think 7/16, maybe 1/2 inch. Pull those little bolts out, that pulls that little bracket off, and then you can swing the brake line, the hard lines on out of the way. I'm using a plasma cutter to cut this. Usually I've in the past, even though I've had a plasma cutter handy, in the past I've just used a cutoff wheel. But I've done something to my shoulder, so it's really difficult to sit with both hands up here. So I'm just using the plasma cutter, so I ain't got a whole bunch of weight out in front of me. So once we get this unbolted and get the brake line swung out of the way, then I'll get my template set up here, and then we'll mark it out, and then we'll slice and dice it with the plasma cutter. So we'll catch back up here in just a moment. All right, folks. So I've got my template here. I've already marked the center, my center line on it. So basically, we just want to get her lined up. There we go. And then, not know where in the heck my Sharpie is. There it is. So yeah, get her all lined up, and then get her traced out. So I'm not sure if you can see this on the camera very well or not, but this bolt that holds the brake line on, it actually runs right through this side of the cutout. So we're going to lose that mount point. Not a huge deal. We can always take that bracket and that bolt, come down a little ways further, drill out a hole, tap it, and run it back in there. All right, folks, there we go. Got my little plasma cutter and my little wand. Try and make this as smooth as I can. I don't use the plasma cutter very often, so it may be a little herky-jerky, but we'll try and make it as clean as we can. So, well, here we go. All right, folks, so you can see I am not an artist when it comes to the plasma cutter. I mean, it's, you know, whatever. It works though, so it's got the clearance that we need. Everything's good to go. I just kind of, I didn't really clean up the edges. I just kind of knocked all the slag off, or at least most of it that I could see. Knocked that off. We'll probably go, I see a few little pieces floating around in here. She's still a little warm. So what we're gonna do is get those little bits of slag knocked out, and then shoot this guy with some paint, and that way we don't have to worry about it rusting. And then we'll slide the new piece over, and then we'll mark it out and drill our holes so we can get our bolts in. We were going to weld this. But as I got to looking at the other side, one, there's just not a ton of room right here, and you know, I'm fat. It's kind of a pain to climb around under here and, you know, try to let some beads down. So I'm running bolt ends on my other two trucks. It works fine. So we're gonna mark the holes. We'll get those drilled and get the bolts in. And then the other problem that we run into is like on the other side. So you have the frame divot out for the shock to set in. On the other side, it's of course in the back, but there's nowhere to weld to back over on this section on the other side. So yeah, we're just gonna bolt it in. It'll be fine. Let's see, another thing on here is, yeah, you do have the brake line. I just wrapped it up with some aluminum foil, just since I knew I was using the plasma cutter. I figured, you know, save a little heat. Maybe, maybe it won't destroy the brake line. You know, cook it or cook the brake fluid. There's also the actual vent tube. It actually ties in right up top here. So you won't be able to put that vent tube back in up here, because when that other piece comes over, it collars over top the frame and everything. So you won't be able to get the screw through it. So what we're gonna do is we're just gonna take it, draw it back up, and just attach it on one of these bed cross members. Just with a zip tie, it'll be fine. So yeah, that's where we're at. And I guess we're gonna get moving on. So here we go. All right, you can let her down, Caiden. And watch your ears. Ah, dog. Should've worn some ear protection.
Shoulda, coulda, woulda.
Huh?
Exactly.
It's so loud. So now that we got this guy up here, he's mounted, he's flushed. Well, he's not mounted, but he's set on there, he's flush. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take a 1/2" drill bit. So that's what size hole these are. So we're gonna take a 1/2" drill bit. We're just gonna set it in here and spin it in each one of these just to mark our center. Then we'll take and center punch it. Then we'll run a little pilot hole. And then, well, I don't know where my step bits are. Hang on.
I think I put it up.
Yep, right here.
Okay.
And then once we get them center punched, then we get the pilot hole drilled, we'll come back, probably not using this one since it's broken, but we'll use another one of these step bits. Now, just a little heads up to you, step bits absolutely decimate when it comes to drilling these holes. So using the step bit on these is definitely the way to go. The unfortunate side of that is the little chips that fall out. Man, them little suckers are hot, they're big, and they stick to you pretty bad. So yeah. So we'll hit these and we'll get our 1/2" holes drilled out. We got 6 up here on the front, and we got 2 on the bottom that we got to do right here. One on this side, one on this side. And then we'll get our bolts in there and we'll get her bolted up. And then we'll figure out how we're going to redo that brake line and move it on from there. So we'll catch up here in just a second. Well, there it is. So we got that done. It's all bolted in. It is ready to go. The only thing left to do is to reroute the brake line. It's already kind of rerouted up in this section. But we got to tie it back down so it isn't sitting there vibrating. And one thing that I've done on these is I'll just take a piece of rubber hose, just, you know, a piece yay long, split it, get it around the brake line, and then zip tie it on there on any points where it might be rubbing. So just a precautionary thing. Don't necessarily have to do that, but I did it just to make sure that it didn't rub on something it wasn't supposed to. We still got to bolt up that shock. We weren't sure if we was going to have to pull the shock out. We did on the other side, but we weren't sure if we were going to have to on this side, so I went ahead and dropped it. Dropped the nut off of it, so we'll bolt that guy back up. But yeah, we just got to bolt up that brake line, bolt up that shock, and then this side's done. And you might have noticed that I destroyed one of my lights. So in case y'all guys are wondering, these little 4-foot cheapo LED lights from Amazon, they're pretty good. They're pretty robust. They put up some abuse, but you know, when you slip and you damn near bend it in half, you know, you let the magic smoke out, it don't work after that. So no big deal. These things are cheap enough. I mean, these are the ones that I have mounted up over my workbench. You know, I have a different type. Man, I have 8-footers up here, but I have these little 4-footers for my workbench. Boy, I bent the mess out of that, didn't I? But anyways, those things are pretty cheap. I think the last time I bought was a 12-pack. I think it was a dozen. No, maybe not. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. No, it was a half dozen. I think I bought a half dozen. It was like 25 bucks. So they're not expensive. And man, they put out some great light, especially whenever you're up underneath a vehicle. They're amazing for that. They're a little cumbersome in the wheel wells and stuff like that. They kind of get in the way, but you know, they put out pretty good light. So little tip for you, you know, if you're looking for a decent shop light that you can take, and I've got mine. I've got some bungee cords that I hang, like whenever I'm up underneath a hood or something like that, I'll hang it from bungee cord, and it shines really good inside the engine bays, underneath dashes and stuff like that. It's a good bright light. So little tip for you. I know the Milwaukee makes a battery operated one that's got the little things that, you know, expand and contract, and you can paint it on stuff, and you can hook it up on hoods and all that stuff. But you know, it's Milwaukee. I don't know how much they cost, because I already know they're going to be more than what I'm willing to pay. So as long as you can keep from bending them in half, they last pretty good while. All right, folks. So we know that the axle seal's leaking here, and yeah, it's pretty bad. Yeah, we'll just show you really quick. So pulling a brake drum, and you can kind of see what the brake drum looks like. It's pretty well coated in oil. And then everything's coated in oil. Look at that. Yeah, that ain't stopping nothing. That is pretty gross, pretty bad. So we're gonna get in here, tear this down, and then I guess while I'm doing this, we're gonna get the diff opened up and start draining off so we can get the axle slid out, so we can actually, you know, fix this. So we'll catch back up here in just a minute. So Caiden's over here draining the rear end out. Some really good, thick, black, nasty gear oil coming out of that guy. Well, I'm over here cleaning up these brake parts. Or attempting to clean up some of these brake parts, because it's pretty bad. Alright, so we got the diff cover off, and we got to pull the axle out so we can get to that axle seal on that side. So I got to pull this retainer bolt right here, which then will allow this pin to come out. I don't know the technical terms for all these things. I just know how it works. So pull this bolt, drop this pin. That'll get this pin out of the way. Then we can slide the axle in just a smidge, pull the C-clip, pull the axle out, fix our axle seal over there, and then put it back in and just, you know, basically the reverse of the tear down, and get this thing put back together. And then we'll hit her with some brake clean just to clean it out good, make sure we get all the old gear oil out of it, and clean our surface up and do all that fun stuff, and then put the cover back on, and, you know, all that good stuff. So we'll catch back up here in just a moment. So in case you couldn't see what we were doing, the axle shaft comes out right here. Push it out a little bit. I reached in, got the C-clip, pulled it out. So we got the pin that goes in right here. Here's that bolt that goes, it locks that pin in place, which then locks the axle so it doesn't, you know, walk and do bad things. So we've got the axle shaft out right there. Caiden's over here cleaning the shaft. Good job, Caiden.
Thank you.
You're a pro, man. You're a pro.
I got practice.
So we're going to get back out over here, and we're going to get that seal pulled and get it all cleaned up and get the new seal in. So catch back up here in a second. All right, so we got our axle seal here. She's looking a little rough. Just a little on the rough side. So yeah, we're going to go ahead and replace this guy. Hopefully them bearings are okay. I ain't got to get into that. All right, so if you don't have a seal or bearing puller, you can always make one. There's not a whole lot to it. Just a piece of steel, flat steel stock. Actually, this one's even bent a little bit just from, you know, something. I don't know what. I used this on Jeremy's truck. If you look back, I can put it up above. On Jeremy's, when we did his rear axle, basically I slid this in, grabbed a hold of the seal, maybe the bearing, I don't remember. No, it's the seal. I grabbed a hold of the seal, I clicked it with some vice grips on the back and knocked it out with a hammer just fine. And you'll also see this, if I can add one, I'll put it up top as well, on the Toyota 4Runner video for my buddy Travis, when we were doing his pinion seal on the Toyota rear end. We ended up cutting this little slide out of the back just so we could kind of grab it and rock it. We didn't have enough room to get in that deep. So we're going to see if either one of these will work right quick. I'm pretty sure this guy's going to work. So just set them in like so. And we're not worried about saving this seal. So put him in. Give her a little tug. And out she comes. Works out pretty well. And instead of having to buy a tool, I just made it out of some scrap metal we had. So that works out pretty good. Little tip for you anyhow. So I'm gonna clean this surface up, get this, I don't know if that's just paint from the old one, but we're gonna clean this up a little bit. May take a peek at these. These bearings seem okay. They roll all right. They don't feel chewed up or pitted, but we're gonna clean all this up. We'll get the new seal ready to go in. Before you go checking or trying to put your new one in, always just kind of double check it. Make sure that your sizes are the same. And this one is. So we're good there. And then you never want to put these things in dry. You can put a little gear oil here, or you can put a little bit of axle grease on it. Usually I do axle grease, and then just kind of tap it to get it started. And then you'll want to find something that's about the same size as this. They have tools for that, but I don't have them. If you don't have something that's about the right size, just get you a 2x4, you know, a little piece of wood, and set on there and just slowly tap it in, so that way you're not dinging this guy up when you go really beating on it. Which you really shouldn't be beating on it bad. But anyways, so I'm gonna get some gear oil and or some grease and put that on here. So and don't forget to grease the inside of this, so whenever you slide the axle in, when you slide the axle in, you don't want it dragging across this rubber right there. You don't want to go in the hole dry. Yes, I said it. So you just want to make sure and put you a little bit of grease on that, so that way when you slide the axle shaft in, it's not dragging and tearing up your brand new seal. So a little grease in on here, a little grease on this outside edge, and then knock her in nice and clean, and then you can put the axle back in. So I'm gonna get on that and be back in a second. Now, like I said, they make tools for all this stuff. If you don't have a tool, you know, you can use a hammer and just slowly tap your way around it and slowly get her on in there. I've actually got this. It's let's see, I think it's an axle seal off a Dana 44 if I remember correctly. Anyways, it's got a nice aluminum body to it. So nice thing is it fits dead up on top of these things. So I can sit there, I can tap them in. All right. Now you'll feel it seat. You'll hear the tone change as you're tapping on it. You'll hear, I don't know if you can notice that, but the tone did change as it was seating. So after it sat or seated, I don't know what the proper grammar is there, but once it's seated, there we go. Just gave it a couple more taps all the way around. You know, of course, using my little buffer here, and just to verify everything's even, everything's seated in there good and proper. So we are pretty well ready to go ahead and put the axle shaft back in. And we've got our gear oil here on the seal surface. So whenever you're setting these in, you don't want to drag this on that brand new seal. So you got to be a little careful. All right. So now we're getting over there to the center section. So now, there we go. We'll get her on there, get her slid on in. So now I'll just climb back under there and put the C-clip in, slide that pin in, put that long skinny bolt back in there. I guess it would be called a retaining bolt. So we'll get that back in there. And then we're gonna clean out the diff and clean the surfaces up and get that all ready. And then I'll come back out here and we'll get these brakes put back together. And then we'll be in good shape. Now you can kind of see, there's the axle shaft. There's the end of it. This little groove, I don't know if you can see because my fat finger in the way here, but this little groove here is where that C-clip sets in. So we're going to get our seat clip, and we will slide her back into place. C clip's in place, so now we can shove this guy back out. You want to pull that out a little bit? You might have to rotate just a smidge. Okay. Ooh. Don't rotate too much because we don't have pins in. Okay. So we got that slid out. Now we can take and we can put our main pin back in. Oh, don't want to drop it. And I'm out of hands. There we go. And then we get our pin back in and we get her bolted back down. Give her a little torquey love. Maybe try to figure out a way to torque this guy without it. Hey, son, can you go put this thing in park?
Yeah.
There we go. Okay. Alrighty, so got the rear end back together. Now we just got to basically clean the surface up because there's a lot of crap everywhere here. So we'll just get this surface cleaned up real good and make sure that we got, good God, make sure that we've got all the old grimy crap out of there. And then once that's all done, we'll put the cover back on. And then the fill plug for these 12 bolts is a 12 bolt rear end. Fill plugs on the front, on the pinion area. There's a little pipe plug sitting in right over there. So you just pipe plug it and good to go. So, all right, well, I guess I'm gonna get over here and get the brakes put back together. And I think I'm gonna let Caiden work up underneath this truck to clean the surface up. So I can actually sit up instead of laying down. So anyhow, I'm gonna get back on the brakes and catch up in a second. Okay, doke. So got the brakes put together. We're gonna reuse the drum. It's a new drum. It was coated in grease, cleaned it up with a lot of brake clean. And then I don't know if you can see what I did in here. I just took some sandpaper and just, you know, scuffed it up really good. Changing directions and, you know, something for the new pads to seat in. So now we'll set her on there and get this guy adjusted. Maybe. Well, it's about right. You want a little bit of drag. It may be a little loose. I'll bring it out just a little bit. Yep, I like that. All right, so got the brakes set, new pads, scuffed up the drum, pulled the axle out, put a new axle seal in, and we got the diff cover back on. We're just gonna let the we didn't have a gasket for it, so we just used, you know, some sealant, and so we're gonna let that cure out overnight, and then we'll put some fluid in the rear end. Tomorrow morning we'll do that, and then tomorrow, and then since it's getting kind of late, we're gonna call it a night. It's like 10, I think, close enough. So it's getting kind of late, so we're gonna knock out that exhaust tomorrow. So yeah, we'll see y'all in the morning. All right, folks, that's gonna wrap it up for this week. Still a lot more to go on this truck, but just time constraints, you know, try to keep the video to 30-45 minutes at the most. Definitely going to go over, so look to finish the look for us to finish out the truck next week. We'll get her all wrapped up, fired up, running down the road, and we'll pick up where we left off. So if you haven't liked the video, go ahead and hit that like button. If you haven't subscribed, why not? Why haven't you done that? Just hit the button right down there. So both those things help the YouTube algorithm out and helps to grow the channel. So check back in with us next week when we finish this out. And just remember, it ain't got to be perfect, just good enough. Y'all take it easy.